to make up the difference, right? And I think that Bitcoin is going to drive America to become more of a solid citizen, and that's probably a good thing, right? So I think having some pressure is not a bad thing. I think we can absolutely be more fiscally conscious and run a tighter ship on government, um, without going down into the abyss. I think this is a good thing. It will put more financial discipline on America, and I think it'll be obviously great for people who buy Bitcoin at this point. But I think it's an inevitable thing at this point. Hard money is this form of hard money is not optional. It's going to take over. The game theory is too strong, and you just there's really it's inevitable. So it's not like I'm trying to persuade people to do it. I think it's going to happen whether I want it or to happen or
Right.
not. And so I think you should just get on board.
Well, on the point that it's going to force discipline, right? That it's going to curb central banks' abilities to print so recklessly. We have Larry Fink, who was
See an existential risk right now. I do think that the reward is there's never no risk. Every investment has risks, including gold, right? But I think that the risk reward ratio here is very, very attractive for Bitcoin, and I'm very positive.
Well, we're definitely getting that. We're definitely getting that. But again, just to push back here, Fred, I mean, there was a time when it was illegal to own gold in the U.S. between 1933 and 1974. You couldn't own gold. Roosevelt signed an executive order that essentially criminalized the possession of gold, and citizens had to deliver their gold coins, their bullion, and certificates to the Federal Reserve. If not, there were severe penalties for that. So whilst it may not be banned entirely, you mentioned that you think it's not implausible that the U.S. at some point takes a harsh position towards Bitcoin, or even if that means taxing it more.
There's the infamous 6102 executive order, right, where they basically, under Roosevelt, started
Bitcoin's role, dethroning Bitcoin. How would that play out?
Well, the way it would play out, and again, this is a very dark thing for a Bitcoiner to think about, right? But Ethereum has more programmability than Bitcoin, right? It can move things, it can program things. So if you really want to do the full area of tokenization, so tokenization of real world assets. And tokenization is something that Larry Fink talks a lot about. BlackRock talks a lot about as sort of their ultimate end game, right? Is tokenization of stocks, tokenization of real estate, right? Well, that's not really possible on Bitcoin because Bitcoin doesn't, as a network, is not programmable, right? There is a Bitcoin script, but it's not a fully expressive programming language like Ethereum is, or Solana is, or there's a lot of blockchains. But if that is the main thing, you can make the case that Ethereum has a chance because it is much more programmable than Bitcoin. I can't fault them on that. They do have that. That is the main innovation of Ethereum. But
Bitcoin as a power law. So break that down for us. Talk us through that.
Okay, so this chart was discovered by an astrophysicist named Giovanni, and when you're looking at things in astrophysical time frames, you need to look at things that are very small or very small, and then things that are very big, like the distance of the size of the Milky Way, right? So you tend to look at things on a logarithmic scale. And the way of representing relationships in this so-called log space is very natural for physicists. And so it's not crazy that a physicist would have first seen this this relationship. So if you look at that graph, and you look at the price of Bitcoin in the logarithm of the price of Bitcoin, and you look at it in relationship to the logarithm of the time elapsed since the Genesis block, you will see that it's a straight, it sort of wobbles around a straight line right from the very first year of Bitcoin to now. And that straight line means that because the straight line is in log space, it's going to be a banger year for Bitcoin, you know. Now, could we have some drops? Yeah, Bitcoin can drop 10% in a day, right? And it did that the other day, right? Absolutely, it can do that. Now, in my particular case, that's not a reason to not invest in Bitcoin. I think you want to be involved in Bitcoin, even though it can have 10%, 20%, days, and because I think if you look over a couple of year period, it's going to do extremely well. But it's going to take some fortitude, and it's not for the faint of heart, right?
Well, I suppose if you buy and hold, and as you say, not trying to time it, not trying to sell on the upside. It's an approach that many have, but if you just buy and hold, and then it doesn't require such a strong stomach. But I want to hit on what you said in 15 years' time, because that's a number. How do you adjust for inflation with that? How do you, again, you're pricing it back in fiat.
You have 7% inflation over 10 years will double the price in 10 years, right? So, in 15 years, you could see a 15, more 2.5%, 3 times the price. Maybe that's at 7%, but you're probably not going to see that in consumer prices. So, you can just sort of normalize to today's dollars. I would say $20 million. A coin is kind of where we finally end up. Maybe in future dollars, it's 50 million. I don't know. But look, I think the key thing is I think we're getting to $1 million a coin, right? $1 million per Bitcoin. I believe that. I think we're going to get there.
But a lot sooner than in 15 years, $1 million a Bitcoin. Well, what's the price projection for
our
that?
law says you will get there in 8 years, right? That's 8 years. The power. 8 years, right? So that's kind of, if you just follow the curve, it says you'll get there in 8, right? Now, a lot of Bitcoiners I know say, no, Fred, you're way too bearish. It's going to happen before 8. And they're saying because of the ETF. And I'm not saying I completely disagree, but I just think if you said, Fred, are we going to get to $1 million within a decade? I'd say probably, probably. And recently said there's a word for people who save their money in fiat, and that word is poor, right? Because rich people don't keep the vast majority of their money in fiat. They keep it in property. They keep it in equities. They keep it in houses. They keep it in gold. They keep it now in Bitcoin. So, if having a central bank digital currency, fine, no problem. It's an alternative to cash. I think it won't even be that big of a deal. I think it's doesn't really matter. I'm against it because I don't love the fact that they're going to monitor everything I do. So I'm not in favor of the central bank digital currency. I don't like it, but it's not going to be competition to Bitcoin at all, because
on the contrary, does it boost the value of Bitcoin? Does it boost the appeal of Bitcoin? Because it's
I think it's going to be a stepping stone, but I think Bitcoin's going to do so well before